It's Friday, February 19th. I'm Lucy Steiner.
And I'm Sam Cedar. Which of these stories will you be talking about today?
Power is slowly being restored in Texas and other states where the electric grid buckled under severe weather. But millions remain without drinking water, and at least 40 people around the country have died due to the storms and the resulting infrastructure crisis. Meanwhile, grocery workers and their union representatives say they are going unvaccinated despite having essential frontline jobs. This is as their employers bask in record profits during the coronavirus pandemic. And lastly, Joe Biden sent his immigration bill to Congress. It's being called the most sweeping overhaul proposed in more than 3 decades, and it comes as good news for new Americans and their families.
You are listening to Majority FM's AM Quickie, and these are the stories you need to know.
We hope this newscast finds you safe, warm, and with access to running water. More than 100 million people live in areas under winter weather warnings, according to the Associated Press. Blackouts are expected to continue in some parts of the country for days, as Texas and other states battled winter storms that blew past the worst-case planning of utilities, governments, and millions of shivering residents. Experts said deadly weather will be hitting the U.S. more often, and America needs to get better at dealing with it. This week's storms, with more still heading east, fit a pattern of worsening extremes under climate change. They also show that local, state, and federal officials have failed to do nearly enough to prepare for more dangerous weather. According to the Texas Tribune, experts blame the power system failure on the legislators and state agencies who did not properly heed the warnings of previous storms or account for more extreme weather events warned of by climate scientists. Instead, Texas prioritized the free market. Tom Smitty Smith, a former director of Public Citizen in Austin, said, quote, "Clearly we need to change our regulatory focus to protect people, not profits," unquote. Power has been restored to nearly 2 million homes in Texas, according to the Washington Post, though hundreds of thousands of residents remain without electricity. In Mississippi, more than 140,000 households are still without electricity, while another 100,000 are powerless in Louisiana. Finally, Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz confirmed yesterday that he traveled to Cancun, Mexico, as millions were without power and safe drinking water. In a statement, Cruz said he flew with his daughters Wednesday and would return yesterday amid calls to resign over the family trip. Can you believe this, Mook? This story of classism and vaccine distribution comes via the Washington Post. Though hailed as heroes early in the pandemic, the nation's 3 million grocery workers lag other essential workers when it comes to vaccine priority. Just 13 states, including Maryland, Virginia, California, New York, and Pennsylvania, have begun inoculating such employees as the broader vaccine rollout is hampered by widespread delays. At least 170 grocery employees have died, and thousands more have tested positive for coronavirus, the Post reports. Though many companies offered hazard pay early on in the pandemic, nearly all have stopped. Workers say their vaccine challenges are further proof of how they have been shortchanged, especially as their employers are pulling in record profits. Kroger, the nation's largest grocery chain, made $3 billion in profit last year, an 88% increase from 2019. Other big retailers, including Walmart, Target, and Albertsons, also reported explosive sales gains. According to the Post, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends including grocery workers in the second stage of the vaccine rollout, along with firefighters, police officers, and other frontline essential workers. But states are free to set their own guidelines. 11 states, including Florida, Indiana, Ohio, and Texas, do not have a clear plan to prioritize grocery workers. In Tennessee, grocery workers aren't expected to qualify for the vaccine until the second half of the year, along with camp counselors and prison inmates. Addie James, marketing director for several grocery stores in Memphis, said their employees are not being given the protections necessary to do their job. James added, quote, "It feels like you're screaming into the void, but nobody is listening," unquote.
Hey, Majority.fm's AM Quickie is fueled by JustCoffee.coop. Just Coffee is a worker-owned coffee roaster based in Madison, Wisconsin that has sponsored the Majority Report for nearly a decade. Check out their collection of fair trade roasts, including our own Majority Report blend, and regardless of what you order, receive 10% off of your order when you use the code MAJORITY at checkout. All shipping, of course, is free. That's coupon code MAJORITY at justcoffee.coop.
Donald Trump's toxic legacy is nearing its expiration. President Biden's allies in Capitol Hill introduced his immigration overhaul in the House yesterday morning, the New York Times reports. Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat of New Jersey, said part of Biden's mandate is, quote, fixing our immigration system, which is a cornerstone of Trump's hateful horror show, unquote. The centerpiece of the legislation, according to the Times, is an 8-year path to citizenship for most of the 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the U.S. After passing background checks and paying taxes, they would be allowed to live and work in the U.S. for 5 years. After that, they could apply for a green card, giving them permanent status in the U.S. and an opportunity to win citizenship after 3 more years. The bill would sweep away restrictions on family-based immigration, making it easier for spouses and children to join their families already in the country. It would expand worker visas to allow more foreigners to come to the U.S. for jobs. The legislation does not include a large focus on increased border enforcement. Instead, it adds resources to process migrants legally at ports of entry and invests $4 billion over 4 years in distressed economies in the hopes of preventing people from fleeing to the U.S. because of security and economic crises. Separately, the Washington Post reports that U.S. Immigration and Customs enforcement officers will need pre-approval from a senior manager before trying to deport anyone who is not a recent border crosser, a national security threat, or a criminal with an aggravated felony conviction. This change stems from an interim enforcement memo issued by the Biden administration yesterday. The narrower priorities should result in a steep drop in immigration arrests and deportation. Here's to a more humane policy for everyone.
And now, for some quicker quickies.
Quicker quickie.
NASA's rover Perseverance landed safely on Mars yesterday, the Post reports. It's on an ambitious mission to search for signs of past Martian life and obtain samples of soil and rock that could someday be hauled back to Earth for study. Good luck, little robot. As the Manhattan District Attorney's Office steps up the criminal investigation of Donald Trump, it has reached outside its ranks to enlist a prominent former federal prosecutor to help scrutinize financial dealings at the former president's company, the New York Times reports. The former prosecutor, Mark Pomerantz, has deep experience investigating and defending white-collar and organized crime cases. Good luck to him, too. Top lobbying groups backed by Amazon, Facebook, Google, and other technology giants sued Maryland yesterday, according to the Post. The Silicon Valley companies are seeking to scuttle a new state tax on their massive online advertising revenue and stop other local governments from following its lead. The Maryland law seeks to raise money for education and targets technology companies that do more than $100 million in ad sales each year. Obviously, they can afford to contribute to society. They just don't want to. South Dakota's Republican Attorney General was charged yesterday with 3 misdemeanors for striking and killing a man with his car last summer, avoiding more serious felony charges, according to the AP. Jason Ravensborg could face up to 30 days in jail and up to a $500 fine for each charge. Careless driving, driving out of his lane, and operating a motor vehicle while on his phone. Relatives of the man killed in the collision say they were disappointed but not surprised that the AG was only facing misdemeanor charges. That's American justice for you.
Quicker quickie.
That's all for the AM Quickie today. Join us this afternoon on the Majority Report.